Hello, everyone. Welcome to Board Game Design Time. On this episode, we're going to talk about inspiration, where we get inspiration from, how we use inspiration, and we're also going to do a little challenge where we inspired each other to design a game in less than 24 hours. In fact, since earlier today. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Chris, and I'm here with my good friend Matt. Say hello, Matt.
Hello?
And let's talk a little bit about where we get inspiration from, Matt. So starting with you, when you're designing something, when you're going to go and you sit down, you're like, I want to design a game. Where does the inspiration come from to do that?
Well, a lot of the inspiration can come from, well, pretty much anywhere. I draw a lot of inspiration from like movies and TV. I don't necessarily just copy them, but I get ideas from them. Also, a lot of my ideas come from dreams, oddly enough,
Mhm.
and I've had a lot of good ideas from dreams. I mean, they can get really weird, and you can go get really crazy with them, and your ideas can be unique, to say the least.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because we had someone in our last episode, our episode 0, ask about a game that you designed called Glue Gun Dewdrops. And tell us a little bit of the story about where the inspiration for Glue Gun Dewdrops came from.
Well, that was an actual dream that I had. Well, I wasn't dreaming of glue gun dewdrops, but I had that wake up epiphany, kind of like a fever dream of just boom. And the first thing that popped in my head was glue gun dewdrops. I have no idea where it came from. It's just, it was there. And I was like, you know what? I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get literal with it. I'm gonna actually try to make a game using glue gun dewdrops, like Michael's craft gun putting on fake flowers and roses and stuff.
Yeah.
But and it actually turned out to be a pretty fun game, surprisingly.
Right. And one of the neat things about that was I remember we were actually have at lunch with some friends, and you told us this story, and you're like, I have this idea for a game, and you just said the story of the game, Glue Gun Dewdrops, and you had this elaborate backstory that you had built into it. But at that moment, the game had like no mechanics. You were taking a
Right.
phrase and you're like, I want to make this into a game. And then about a week later, you came to our prototype night where you actually had a game designed around those mechanics. I think part of it was because we were like, that's not a good name for a game. And then you wanted to defy us a little bit. Uh,
Yeah, one person in particular,
yeah, and we can
but
say her name because she's not watching. But Stephanie Straw
yeah.
from the internet, you know who you are. Insert Straw here on Twitter if you guys want to just, I don't know, follow her. She's pretty cool. Um, but I think that's one of the cool things about inspiration is that sometimes it does, I guess, help to follow those weird threads. And that's one of the things that I learned about inspiration when I started really trying to expand my creativity and in some ways force the creativity a little bit. I found it difficult for me to just like, come up with all these game ideas unless I actually sat down and tried to think of them. And I had to get the inspiration from somewhere. And so what I started doing was cataloging little events during the day or mechanics from certain games I was playing and just kind of taking a mental note of them. And so a lot of times nowadays I'm inspired by things, but in sort of weird ways. Like I'll play a game and I'll enjoy it, but there'll be like one mechanic in that game that I think is amazing. Camel Up is a good example. And in fact, we incorporated the betting from Camel Up into what eventually was Glue Gun Dewdrops. But I was just like, you know what? I like this one element of this thing, and then I wonder how far I can take that or how far I can push that. And in some ways, it's the same thing with if I'm watching a movie or watching a TV show, if I'm playing a video game, I might like one specific thing. Platforming games is a great example because I made a game prototype where it was a board game side scroller where you're actually platforming. And I was just like, and this was before Mario Maker. I'm sorry, but it was. But I was like, what would be fun is if you could just make a level in a video game. And I wonder if I could do a board game about making a level in a video game. And that's sort of where it came from. Uh, One of the things I think, and I think you'll agree, Matt, one of the hiccups that people have is they try to be inspired by something and then totally like encapsulate every element of that. Is that something that you've encountered when you're inspired by a movie? Have you tried to stay too close to the source material?
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. And like, for example, I'm a huge horror fan and I love the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I really wanted to make a game surrounded or around the third movie, the Dream Warriors. And I found out I was just basically making the Dream Warriors into a game. I was like,
Yeah.
well, okay. I really like the idea of people fighting these nightmares and they're cognizant during their dreams and they get all these powers. So I had to like scale it down. You weren't fighting, you know, Freddy Krueger essentially.
Hmm.
You were fighting something bigger. And I mean, I got that idea and it thought I just had to scale it down,
Right.
basically.
And really, it's a difference between being inspired by something and straight up adapting something. Like if
Yeah.
you wanted to make a Dream Warriors board game, you could do that, and you could sort of try to make it feel like the Dream Warriors element of Nightmare on Elm Street 3. Um, but being inspired by it means something different. And I think what your game ended up being, and that game at the time was called Tantabus.
Hmm.
Uh, it was basically it became a game about being in a dream world, and it had really nothing else, or being in a nightmare dream world, I should say. But it had nothing else to do with the movie at all. Like that was just like the crux of it. And that's one of the takeaways that I want people to leave with this episode is that if you find something you like, just kind of ruminate on that thought for a little bit and think about the elements, the individual elements that you really like about that thing, and see if those can inspire something. So,
Yeah.
as an example of that, I want to do our little challenge because earlier today we shared pictures with each other of items that
Yeah.
we had because we wanted to do like a little design challenge and be inspire one another. And so I'll go first. But show the audience the object that you showed me in our picture.
Well, I randomly stumbled across a piece of pyrite, aka fool's gold. So I want you to think of a game that revolves around this little nugget.
Yeah, a piece of fool's gold. uh, so in my head I was thinking about fool's gold, and I was sitting at work and during lunch, and it's kind of like, okay, fool's gold, what intrigues me about that? And the first thing that came to mind was the idea of something that is believed to be valuable but is not, right? It's something that is spectacular in its own right, but is not like quite as good as the thing that it's people believe it to be. And it kind of expanded a little bit more, and I just thought about the idea of gold in general and panning for gold. And so what I came up with, and I'm not sure what the theme would be because I don't think the theme would actually be panning for literal gold, but a lot of times in deck builders, in a deck building game, you start with a small deck and you add pieces to it to make a larger deck, and eventually get your engine going. And throughout that, you're going to try to get rid of some of the extra fluff and sort of discard it, and so you're left with just like the goods, the gold, if you will. So I thought it'd be cool to have a game where you start with like a 40 card deck, like a 40 card full deck, but a lot of that deck is trash. And throughout the game, your goal is to whittle that deck down, discard all of like the cards that aren't really helping you, and pick an engine. So in that game, there might be a couple different pathways. Let's say I'm just going to use like elements because it's easy to think about. Let's say there's a water pathway, and in the water pathway, it's all about like deception and interacting with your the enemy that's trying to mess with you, sort of like the blue color wheel in Magic. And so there's going to be some water cards in there, and if you want to go down the water path, you can by getting rid of the fire, earth, and wind cards, or you can go with fire and then get rid of those water cards. And so it's up to you through the game to kind of see what the situation is, see what your opponent's doing, and try to craft the deck by getting rid of stuff in order to defeat your opponent. So again, it's loosely inspired by this idea of pyrite and fool's gold, but obviously has nothing to do with the actual object that Matt showed me. So, Matt, this is your first time hearing that. What are your thoughts on that game?
I think it'd be great. I mean, I say make a prototype, tweak it, let's do it.
Matt's all about always prototyping everything. That's what.
Always prototype everything.
That's going to be one of our
Constantly
mantras. You'll
prototype.
see as we go on. You'll see that that's going to be one of our mantras. Okay, so I don't know what that game's called, but Fool's Gold, and I'll kind of put it on the back burner, and maybe someday it'll be something. I just like the idea of a reverse deck builder. Sue me.
Yeah,
Anyways,
like
I showed Matt an object as well, and I showed Matt this little Diablo.
it's a little tiny Diablo. He's
It's
so
a
cute.
chibi Diablo from Heroes of the
Yeah.
Storm. It's really
So the
adorable.
first thing I thought um about was, okay, I'm gonna go. I calls him like I see him. It's a little devil, right? And then when I thought of little devil, I thought of the little angel and little devil on someone's shoulder. So I kind of wanted to make a party game revolved around that whole, uh, I guess, scenario of someone trying to get through a moral issue of some sort. So you have one person who is the in the dilemma, and then you have two other teams. So there's a deck of cards, and those are like the moral dilemma cards. One side plays the little devil, and one side plays the little angel. Um, Now, with this moral dilemma played in front of you, you have to persuade that person that this is a good idea or what path you should take. And then each team has a card that can alter that dilemma. So say you were walking down the street and you see a dollar bill, and then little devil, oh, you better pick up that dollar bill and go spend it on candy. And the angel's like, no, you got to pick up that dollar bill and find out who it belongs to. But then someone can play a card or a random encounter saying, you as you get closer, it looks like a wad of $100 bills or something like that. It's more than the eye, more appears to the eye.
Yeah.
So then that could change the argument. I don't know, just an idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. When you were started describing that, I thought it'd be cool if the person who's being influenced by the angel and the devil in their shoulder doesn't know which side's which, and has to figure out like who is the devil side and who is the angel side. That
That
could be kind of
I like
interesting.
that.
Um, so yeah, that's a great idea. And again, that just came from a little chibi Diablo and turned into like a party game about moral dilemmas. So there you go. Obviously, that's a really sort of straightforward and strange example of inspiration. But that kind of thing happens a lot. And that's really the process that we go through. And throughout this series, you'll hear a lot of us talking about games that we have designed, and we'll tell you where they came from. And a lot of times they came from the most peculiar places.
Right.
But we would love to hear from you guys. What inspires you? Or if you have any questions about the games that we just pitched randomly, go ahead and go down to the comments. And of course, subscribe to the channel as well, because we have more episodes coming out of Board Game Design Time. We really want to make this about you guys. Ask us questions, give us suggestions, tell us what we're doing wrong, tell us what we're doing right. We'd love to hear from you, because we're hoping through this that we can empower some of you to go out there and just design something and try it out. And who knows, maybe you'll strike fool's gold. That was horrible.
Designed from those fever dreams.
That was
It
really bad.
helps.
That was a really bad joke. All right. Anyways, on that note, we'll see you next time, and take care. Bye bye.